It's shameful. Y'all are a disgrace.
We're watching the fall of this administration.
What I think is interesting about this case, this story, is you can be...
Tensions are escalating in the small town of Dolton, Illinois, as local politics take center stage, sparking intense debate and division within the community. The ongoing conflict between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and Trustee Kay Bella has grown beyond a typical political disagreement into a fierce struggle for power, transparency, and accountability. Trustee Bella has been openly critical of Henyard's leadership, particularly questioning the transparency of her administration. This criticism has led to a growing divide among residents, with some rallying behind Henyard, believing she is doing her best under challenging circumstances, while others support Bella's call for more openness and stronger leadership as the dispute intensifies. Board meetings have become increasingly hostile, with passions running high on both sides. For many, the issue has shifted from routine governance to deeper concerns about integrity, public trust, and transparency. Residents are closely monitoring every new development, with local government sessions transforming into battlegrounds for competing visions of the town's future. The conflict has fractured the community, with no clear resolution in sight. As the divide between Henyard supporters and Bella's detractors grows, the town's political climate becomes more unpredictable. The long-term effects on local government operations are uncertain, as the town struggles to maintain its functionality amidst rising tensions. The stakes in this conflict are immense, and with both sides dug in, Dolton's future remains in the balance. As tensions continue to rise, the community faces difficult questions about accountability and leadership, with the outcome of this political drama likely to have lasting implications for the town's governance. The situation is far from resolved, and everyone is waiting to see how it will unfold.
With curiosity and concern, Tiffany Henyard addressed her constituents.
The Thornton Township Supervisor and Dolton Mayor invited the community to Township Talk, where she responded to our report about her use of the township credit card.
In the village of Dolton, Illinois, tensions are rising as Trustee Kay Bella continues to criticize Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration, particularly concerning financial matters. Bella, one of the more outspoken members of the board, has been closely monitoring the village's financial situation, especially expenditures that seem questionable or problematic. Critics have accused Henyard of overspending and intentionally obstructing the documentation process to avoid scrutiny. Bella has emerged as a leading figure in exposing these concerns. Intensifying the rift between her and the mayor. This ongoing conflict has led to a deepening divide within the community, with Henyard's leadership coming under increasing scrutiny. The contentious relationship came to a head in a recent board meeting when Bella raised pointed questions about the village's expenses, specifically those presented under suspicious circumstances. Bella pressed the mayor on whether certain predetermined monetary figures had already been set for specific charges, only to discover that the village had paid for certain expenses without prior approval from the board. Following a moment of silence, the village's lawyer attempted to clarify the situation, explaining that individual bills under $5,000 could be paid without prior authorization, though the board could approve invoices retroactively. The lawyer further added that the costs were covered by a special event fund created for such expenses. However, when Bella probed deeper, it was revealed that the invoices for the event had been deliberately split into smaller amounts, each under $5,000, to circumvent the approval process altogether. Outraged by what she saw as a serious violation of protocol, Bella refused to let the issue slide. She voted against the motion, calling the procedure ambiguous and deceptive and questioning the integrity of the process. Henyard, on the other hand, justified the practice by asserting that the costs were within the budgeted amount and dismissed Bella's objections as theatrics. Henyard, who has always preferred to handle internal affairs behind closed doors to maintain privacy, clashed with Bella's stance on transparency. Bella, a consistent advocate for greater openness in local governance, argued that the trustees had a duty to challenge the mayor and hold her accountable for decisions made in the public eye. Bella's comments received strong support from the audience, further fueling the tension in the room. The public response to Bella's criticism amplified the friction between Henyard and the board, with many residents openly questioning the mayor's leadership. Whispers began circulating that Henyard's leadership problems were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern of questionable spending, a lack of transparency, and an overall disregard for accountability in the administration's handling of finances. The growing dissatisfaction with Henyard's leadership reached a breaking point during a recent board meeting, when Henyard presented the village's budget at an unusually late hour. Just minutes before the board was scheduled to vote on it, Trustee Bella expressed her frustration, claiming that the timing was intentional and designed to prevent a thorough review of the budget before the vote. She pointed out that in previous years, the budget had been presented much earlier, allowing residents ample time to review it and provide feedback. Henyard, however, dismissed Bella's concerns, showing a clear disregard for public input and transparency. This lack of openness, particularly regarding financial matters, deepened public distrust in Henyard's leadership. Bella, along with others, argued that this approach was not only ineffective but also detrimental to the community's trust in its leaders. Bella's ongoing efforts to push for greater transparency have made her a vocal figure in the battle for accountability. In contrast, Henyard's reluctance to openly discuss financial matters or answer tough questions has fueled doubts about her ability to govern effectively. As the situation continues to develop, it is evident that the tensions between the mayor and the trustees are far from resolved. The future of Dolton's leadership is now a major concern for both the board and the residents. The controversy surrounding Henyard's handling of finances and her lack of regard for public opinion appears to be coming to a boil. Many residents are calling for greater oversight and accountability, viewing this as a sign of a more serious problem. Henyard, who was once renowned for her painstaking attention to detail in budgeting and financial oversight, now appears to be dismissing or explaining away questionable expenditures. Under her leadership, a troubling double standard has emerged, as she now seems unwilling to accept scrutiny or answer difficult questions. One of the most significant revelations occurred after a credit card scandal, when the finance director disclosed that the village's credit cards had been canceled the previous year. Residents, including trustee Jason House, became increasingly adamant about obtaining answers and demanded an explanation. Henyard had authorized a number of transactions totaling tens of thousands of dollars on the village's credit cards, but without providing sufficient documentation or substantiating the expenses. As investigations into these transactions progressed, Henyard's leadership came under intense scrutiny. At one point, she even accused board members and trusted community figures of embezzling money from the village. Her accusations were baseless and inflammatory, adding to the mounting distress surrounding her administration. Despite the growing evidence against her, Henyard maintained control over the account management, and her defense of the controversial expenses was weak at best. She insisted that the charges were justified, despite the lack of supporting documentation, and she continued to downplay the severity of the situation. This series of dubious expenses had been approved by the village's financial oversight board, which included Henyard's own team. Emails from the bank revealed that, despite her earlier assertions, Henyard had maintained control over the accounts. In the face of mounting evidence, Henyard adopted a victimhood narrative, claiming that political rivals were attempting to damage her reputation and weaken her power. This conduct only reinforced the perception that she was more focused on preserving her image than addressing the village's financial issues. Her refusal to accept responsibility and the absence of accountability have pushed tensions to a breaking point. Once a group of devoted supporters, Henyard's base is now shrinking, as many residents express growing dissatisfaction with her administration. The ongoing scandal, coupled with her secrecy and lack of transparency, has led many to question whether Henyard is capable of putting the needs of the village above her own self-interest. As the community faces mounting frustration, it becomes clear that Henyard's leadership is no longer tenable for a growing number of residents. The bigger question facing Dolton is whether Henyard's administration will continue to undermine the village's future by prioritizing political gains over the community's well-being. With public trust in Henyard's ability to lead continuing to erode, the future of Dolton's leadership is at a crossroads. The ongoing political struggle is likely to have a lasting impact on the village's future. It remains to be seen whether Henyard can regain the trust of her constituents or whether a new leader will emerge to guide the village towards stability. As the situation unfolds, it is evident that Dolton's political scene has changed significantly. The consequences of this ongoing drama will likely influence the town's political landscape for years to come. One notable development in Dolton is the growing distance between Henyard and the other trustees, particularly as tensions over financial transparency and governance increase. While trustee Bella and her colleagues have pushed for transparency and cooperation, Henyard has used her authority to remind the board that they do not manage the day-to-day operations of the village. This stance, however, has only served to strengthen the perception that Henyard is more concerned with consolidating her own power than serving the public. As political disputes continue to overshadow the town's needs, residents are growing increasingly impatient with the lack of progress. Many, including trustee Bella, believe that public workers should serve the public interest rather than their own self-interest. Bella's persistent efforts to highlight extravagant spending and the failure to foster cooperation within the board have sparked both praise and criticism. As the situation worsens, it has become clear that Bella's efforts have made her a target within Henyard's increasingly defensive administration. Henyard, accused of avoiding difficult questions from the board, has fueled a growing community perception that she is more interested in consolidating power than fulfilling her duties as mayor. This perception has been further reinforced by Henyard's unwillingness to engage in candid conversations or answer questions regarding financial transparency. Recent conflicts at board meetings have revealed deeper issues within Henyard's administration, particularly her refusal to provide the board with access to critical financial records. One particularly contentious exchange involved Trustee Bella, Trustee Jason House, and the Finance Department, who revealed that they had been consistently denied access to essential financial documents needed to make informed decisions. The situation grew even more alarming when Henyard refused to publish these records, citing her personal agreement as the only requirement before they could be shared. This prompted serious concerns about her leadership and governance style. The most shocking revelation came when the issue of payroll transparency was raised. What should have been a simple matter of sharing payroll information with trustees became contentious when Henyard denied any wrongdoing, claiming that she had never instructed anyone to withhold payroll reports. However, upon reviewing emails, Bella discovered that the finance director had indeed delayed the release of the reports. This discovery caused a gasp from meeting attendees and further intensified the growing frustration with Henyard's administration as tensions continue to rise in Dolton. It is clear that the village's political landscape has been permanently altered. With the mayor's refusal to address concerns about transparency and financial accountability, the future of the village's leadership remains uncertain. Whether Henyard can regain the trust of her constituents or whether a new leader will emerge to guide the community remains to be seen. What is certain, however, is that Dolton's political scene is in turmoil, and the fallout from this ongoing drama will shape the future of the village for years to come. Tensions have reached a boiling point in Dolton, Illinois, as the ongoing power struggle between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and Trustee Kiana Bella continues to unfold. Bella, one of the most outspoken members of the village board, has made it her mission to scrutinize the administration's financial matters, particularly regarding questionable expenses and lack of transparency. Critics have leveled accusations against Henyard for excessive spending and for deliberately obstructing the paperwork process in order to avoid scrutiny. Bella has become a vocal leader in exposing these issues. Raising doubts about Henyard's leadership and integrity. At the heart of the controversy are the mayor's financial practices. During a recent board meeting, Bella raised questions about specific charges the village had paid for, which were presented under suspicious circumstances. She specifically inquired whether a predetermined monetary figure had been set for the charges. When it was revealed that the village had paid for certain expenses without prior approval from the board, the meeting grew tense. In an attempt to clarify the situation, the village's lawyer explained that bills under $5,000 could be paid without prior authorization, but the board could approve invoices retroactively. Additionally, these costs were covered by a special event fund created for such purposes. However, Bella pressed further and uncovered a startling revelation. The invoices for the event had been deliberately split into smaller amounts, each under $5,000, in an attempt to circumvent the approval process. Altogether outraged by what she perceived as a serious violation of protocol, Bella refused to let the issue slide and voted against the motion. She emphasized that the procedure seemed both ambiguous and deceptive, calling into question the integrity of the entire financial process. Henyard, however, defended the practice, claiming that the costs were within the budgeted amount and dismissing Bella's concerns as an overreaction. While Henyard preferred to handle internal matters behind closed doors to maintain privacy, Bella maintained that the trustees had a duty to challenge the mayor and hold her accountable for decisions made in the public eye. Bella's stance was met with support from the audience, further intensifying the tension in the room. The fallout from this meeting only intensified the growing divide between the mayor and the board. Many residents, once loyal to Henyard, began to openly question her leadership. Whispers began circulating that Henyard's problems with financial mismanagement went beyond isolated incidents. A growing number of people pointed to a pattern of questionable spending, a lack of transparency, and an overall disregard for accountability. The community, once confident in Henyard's leadership, now found itself grappling with an erosion of trust. This frustration came to a head when Henyard presented the village's budget at an unusually late hour, just before the board was scheduled to vote on it. Trustee Baylor, frustrated by the timing, expressed concerns that it had been intentionally chosen to prevent a thorough review of the budget. Historically, the budget had been presented earlier, allowing residents ample time to review and provide feedback. Instead of addressing Baylor's concerns, Henyard dismissed them, demonstrating a lack of regard for public input. This lack of transparency only deepened public distrust in Henyard's leadership. with Bella and others arguing that this approach was not only ineffective, but also damaging to the community's faith in its leaders. The political divide continued to widen as Henyard's reluctance to openly discuss financial matters and answer tough questions raised serious doubts about her ability to govern effectively. As the situation unfolded, Bella's ongoing efforts to push for greater transparency made her a central figure in the battle for accountability. Meanwhile, Henyard's refusal to address these concerns only fueled further skepticism regarding her leadership. One particularly troubling issue arose when Henyard was confronted with a credit card controversy. The village's finance director disclosed that the village's credit cards had been canceled a year prior, raising questions about whether Henyard had authorized a number of transactions totaling tens of thousands of dollars on the village's credit card without proper documentation or substantiation. When the investigation into these transactions proceeded, Henyard's leadership came under even more intense scrutiny. At one point, Henyard accused board members and other trusted community figures of embezzling money from the village, an accusation that was not only baseless but also inflammatory. Despite growing evidence against her, Henyard continued to insist that the charges were justified. These dubious expenses were approved by the village's financial oversight board, which included Henyard's own team. Emails from the bank revealed that, despite her earlier assertions, Henyard still maintained control over the account management. Instead of accepting responsibility for these actions, Henyard adopted a victimhood narrative, claiming that her political rivals were attempting to damage her reputation and lessen her power. This conduct only served to confirm suspicions that Henyard was more focused on maintaining her image than addressing the village's financial problems. Her refusal to accept blame and her lack of accountability worsened the growing dissatisfaction with her leadership as tensions reached a boiling point. The political crisis in Dolton began to mirror broader concerns about leadership and accountability. What had once been a group of devoted supporters of Henyard's administration was quickly turning into a growing coalition of disenchanted residents. Many now questioned whether Henyard could put the needs of the community above her own ego and self-interest. The growing distance between Henyard and the trustees was evident, particularly as Henyard continued to assert that the board did not manage day-to-day operations. This stance only served to reinforce the perception that Henyard was more concerned with consolidating power than actually helping the people of Dolton. As the political drama unfolded, many residents became increasingly vocal in their frustration, voicing concerns that Henyard's leadership was obstructing progress and preventing the village from addressing more pressing issues. Bella, who had been relentless in her efforts to shine a light on the extravagant spending and lack of cooperation within the board, became a central figure in the growing political drama. Her criticism of Henyard's leadership style only deepened the mayor's defensive tactics, making Bella a target within Henyard's increasingly embattled administration. Henyard's refusal to engage in candid conversations and her repeated attempts to shut down discussions regarding financial transparency added fuel to the fire, increasing the strain on both the village board and the community. Despite the escalating tensions, Henyard continued to insist that the board's accusations were unfounded. She repeatedly refused to share key financial records with the trustees, including the crucial credit card statements that had not been made available since May of the previous year. Bella, unconvinced by Henyard's dismissals, pressed for transparency, demanding proof of the mayor's claims that the village's credit cards had been canceled. The mayor's reluctance to provide any verifiable evidence only deepened suspicions surrounding her leadership, fueling further criticism from the board and the community. The stakes of the political struggle in Dolton have never been higher. With Henyard's credibility continuing to erode, residents began to voice their concerns more openly. Many were now questioning whether Henyard could recover from the damage done to the community's trust and whether the village could move forward from this leadership crisis. At the same time, Bella's efforts to restore transparency and ensure accountability had made her a central figure in the ongoing drama, earning her praise from some residents, but also making her a target of Henyard's increasingly defensive administration. The unresolved conflict between Henyard and Bella highlights the deepening divide between the mayor and the trustees. As tensions mount, it remains unclear whether the village will be able to overcome its current leadership crisis or if the political drama will continue to define its future. Residents, frustrated by the ongoing dysfunction and infighting, continue to demand accountability and answers from their leaders. The ongoing struggle for transparency and accountability has paralyzed Dolton's political landscape, leaving the future of the village uncertain. The conflict between Henyard and Bella is far from over, and it is likely to continue to shape the town's political future for years to come. Whether the village can recover from this leadership debacle or if the political chaos will persist remains to be seen. However, one thing is certain: The residents of Dolton are watching closely, and they are demanding answers. The political drama in Dolton has become a defining moment in the village's history. With each new revelation about financial mismanagement and lack of transparency, the community's trust in Henyard's administration continues to erode. Whether Henyard can regain the trust of her constituents, or whether a new leader will emerge to guide the village towards stability, remains to be seen. As the conflict between Henyard and the trustees continues to unfold, the stakes for the future of Dolton have never been higher.